Today is day 2 of the Karen Read trial. This is part 2, starting with the end of Carrie Roberts' testimony. If you missed part 1, go back and watch that. So on April 26, 2022, she testified in front of the grand jury along with a bunch of other people. She was with her husband. She was also with Jen and Matt McCabe. And they were kind of like talking ahead of testifying. She said that she also talked to Jen McCabe this morning, like to wish her well ahead of her testimony too. So long story short, at the grand jury testimony, what she testified to is that she overheard, not someone told her, she had to overhear it herself, overheard Karen Read ask Jen McCabe to Google hypothermia, how long, and then she stopped, Google hypothermia, and he's reading the transcript. And he wants to know basically, did you see this with your own eyes, or was this something that was told to you? And what it comes down to is that she says that she didn't understand the question from Adam Lally in the grand jury, and she did not hear her ask that. She was told that she asked that. So Alan Jackson is saying what you told the grand jury was not true, and asking like, was this a lie? And basically she's saying, yes, this was not true. Technically it's not true, but I didn't lie on purpose. And Bev wants to know, like, did you lie? She says that, and she says, well, not technically. So she's saying that she misunderstood the question. And there's a lot of this though, because they started creating this timeline together. All of these friends, and this is when Jen McCabe is kind of just in her ear with like, this is what happened, and we don't want to know what other people have told you. Your testimony is only supposed to be what you saw and heard. Not the most flattering picture, but it does appear that she perjured herself, and it would have been really interesting to know how this all would have played out if that testimony wasn't given, because another eyewitness hearing that Karen said to Google the hypothermia really could have changed the trajectory of the course because of the case, because that was such a huge bombshell moment. Obviously, Karen was just like not happy today. But that basically wraps up Carrie Roberts' testimony, and the next witness they call is Peggy, who is John O'Keefe's mother. I also want to mention that this is Paul. This is John O'Keefe's brother. The last trial and the first trial, his wife, Erin, I think her name is, sat next to him every single day of testimony. Maybe she missed like 1 or 2 days. There has been a whole scandal with him texting a different woman. So she has not been at the trial. And I don't know if it's because of that or because she can't get off work or what. But he has not been sitting next to his wife. And this is what the kind of like setup looks like. Turtle Boy is actually sitting far left over here. He's out of the frame, but those are all of just the journalists and reporters in the top row there. And then that is all of like John O'Keefe's friends and family there. The next witness is John's mother, Peggy O'Keefe. She's been married to John's father for I think 53 years. She actually has custody now of John's niece and nephew, and she moved into the house that John had to take care of the kids there in Canton. It's a really emotional day of testimony. When she comes on the stand, she's crying a ton, emotional as she should be. Her daughter died in 2013. 2 months later, her daughter's husband died. And then now her son has died. It's just a lot of trauma for someone. So she was very emotional on the stand. But she said she heard the news from Carrie Roberts. That's the phone call that she got. And Carrie had offered to drive them to the hospital, and Peggy said, we can drive, we both have 4-wheel drive cars. And if you remember, Carrie Roberts called and said, I'll drive you guys because you don't have 4-wheel drive. So that's an inconsistency, but probably not important at all. It's just I pick up on a lot of these things. Her niece was actually an employee at Good Samaritan Hospital, so she was calling the niece, trying to get updates on John that way. They went to Good Samaritan Hospital in to see John. She's been crying the whole time of all of this testimony, rightfully so. I felt horrible for the woman. She didn't testify the first trial. her husband did, actually, John's father. So I'm wondering what Hank Brennan's playbook is with bringing her on the stand, but I think it has to do with proving that Karen had a bad relationship with John's family, which I don't think they ever had a good relationship personally. I think that John and Karen were just casually dating. She became very close with his niece and nephew, but as we'll find out later, like I found out in the last trial, I think her and John were potentially like on their way to fizzling out. She says that Karen and Karen's father came over to the house after they left the hospital, and she saw them come in, but she didn't see them around the house at all. They had went upstairs, and she actually says that like she wished she would have followed them. She didn't know which room they went in, but they were up there for about 10 to 15 minutes. There's no cross-exam by Jackson in any of that, but essentially I think the reason she was called was to just lay the foundation that somebody was upstairs for 10 to 15 minutes unattended, and this is where John's computer was, and the ring footage that's missing would have been on that computer. So I think they're laying that foundation, and also the foundation that Karen was kind of a crazy person, and she ended up taking her car and leaving the house, and her and Peggy were fighting. We'll get into more of that kind of tomorrow because there's more. There's more to that. So after she's off the stand, Brennan introduces a new piece of evidence. He's been entering these clips from the ID documentary, and this is the one where Karen, the defense had no objection to it. It's the clip of her saying that she thought that John's mother thought that she did something to John. She wanted to hug Patrick, and then she said she didn't feel comfortable at the house and she had to leave. And that's when her father, her, and I think her brother was with her. They all left the house. So there's going to be a ton more to the story. It's very early. Hank Brennan is just laying the foundation. The next witness is Trooper Garino, and he is the witness that said "kill me" under his breath under direct examination last year. If you remember that, there was like a hot mic moment. Very awkward for him, but he works for the Mass State Police at the District Attorney's Office. He does cell phone and digital forensics. He explains he received on-the-job training and then took some courses for Celebrate extractions, etc., all of the software and hardware that they use to become proficient in those technologies. They start going over the gray key data, which is like the cell phone extraction and like snooze. Some of this is very boring. They're not going into the specifics of it. They're just explaining how this process is done. They had John's phone right away. They had his password right away. The phones were turned over to Trooper Garino by Trooper Buchanan and Trooper Proctor, who were leading the investigation. They didn't have the passcode for Karen Reed's phone, and they didn't have the software update to get into her phone until like July 2022. So basically that's it. He'll be back for recall. He was just laying the foundation with the Celebrate report. The next witness is Daniel Whitley. He's a paramedic firefighter with Canton. He's the EMT that transported Karen Reed to Good Samaritan Hospital when she was sectioned because her father called the police and said that she was making statements that she was going to harm herself. And they took her in an ambulance. They did some blood work at the hospital. And he is testifying that she was uncooperative to stay in the room and she wouldn't put the gown on. So it's just kind of maybe more of like a character witness and like what her state of mind was that evening. Yannetti does the cross-exam. He's setting the scene that the lawn was full of EMTs, police, firefighters, more of like Brian Albert didn't come outside when all these people were in his front lawn. And then he starts to make connections between him and Carrie Roberts. I guess they live in the same neighborhood and they do know each other. He says that he learned Karen Reed had MS during his treatment of her. And then a few weeks after the accident, he told investigators that he thought of Karen Reed as snarky. And then the jury's dismissed for the day, awkwardly. Like we could have wrapped up that witness, but we didn't. So we will be back on Thursday.